Welcome to Inner Peace Better Health, where transformation takes center stage. And I'm your host, Shreya. Today's guest, Graham Skidmore, once laid within the heart of corporate America until his soul said, "This isn't it." Now he is a bridge builder for a vacant system and authentic living. We'll explore the powerful cycle of growth, restoration, and reclamation, and why true success starts with inner alignment and not outer applause. So, welcome, Graham. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you so much for having me, Shreya. I really appreciate it. I've been listening to a few of your podcasts to get episodes to get a little flavor, and it's impressive how you do everything on the fly and just meld the conversations together. I'm excited.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind words. And Graham, your journey from high level executive to consciousness driven visionary is really bold. So, what pushed you to walk away from that, like what many chase?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of people have talked about it, surrender or like a beautiful spiritual experience, and maybe towards the end, I've had a little bit more of the surrender focus, but in the initial, my 7 or 8 years where I've been focused on this, it was definitely much more of a beaten into submission kind of situation where no matter how hard I tried, no matter what I wanted to do, no matter how much I wanted it to be my way, the universe said, no, it's time for you. It's time for you to get going on your journey. And no matter, and so I definitely was guided to stay on my path, regardless of, how challenging or enjoyable I wanted to make that journey for myself.
Yes. And thank you for sharing your story with us. And was there a moment when you realized that success without peace wasn't really success?
Yeah, it was interesting. At the end of my corporate journey, I knew something was. I knew that there were two pieces that really stuck out to me as being indicators that something's not working. Well, the first was during the traditional like yearly reviews or whatever, when the people that reported to me would be pleased with me, the people I reported to were not as pleased with me. And when in the years when the people who were pleased with me, then the people that reported to me were not as pleased with me. So I recognized there was this contradiction that, after many years of trying to build the bridges there, just it wasn't going to happen, which then led into the ultimate thing, which was it got to the point where the more that I achieved, the more hollow I felt. I said, well, this is really messed up. If I'm playing the game of life the way that I'm told that I'm supposed to, achievement, accolades, awards, money, and I'm only feeling worse about myself and my quality of life continues to go down, this isn't good. I still got a lot of life left to live. And so shortly after that, and so I kind of ignored the calling. I knew about a year or two before I left, I got a little nudge. And by the way, I didn't understand myself as spiritual or spiritually gifted or any of the psyche or whatever somebody wants to call it, during my life. This kind of happened only since my spiritual awakening. But I remember getting told, like, hey, it's time to move on. And of course, I pressed myself for about a year or two trying to do it my way and leave on my terms until it blew up spectacularly to leave me with no other options but to move.
Yes, I think that kind of leap is really easy, but often necessary when the soul starts speaking, at least. And also, you speak of growth, restoration, and reclamation as a cycle. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. So what I so it's the it's so I the what I teach or share information is that we all, and but then a lot of this will overlap with a lot of what a lot of your podcasts have talked about is having a predetermined kind of growth plan before we incarnate, right? And so this ties into that. So one aspect is the personal growth, the lessons that we're here to learn, services, things of that nature. Then the other part is the restoration with our genuine and authentic self, followed by the reclamation of the connection to our higher self, our total self, or our soul. And in each one of those, the growth has three phases to it. One is understanding the knowledge, then it's creating a working knowledge for yourself, followed by the embodiment of that knowledge or that wisdom. And the restoration of your genuine and authentic self is the transformation of the guilt, the shame, the fear, the masks, all of those unproductive things that stand between this human suit that we're wearing and our genuine and authentic self of who we are as our real identity. And so being able to understand those as and transforming them, I should say, into gratitude and a learning experience, followed by then the reclamation with the higher self, the connection of the total self. And that's being able to access your gifts, wisdom, abilities of all of your incarnations while in the physical plane as your day-to-day self. And that comes after we've gone through all of the healing, and then we recognize who ourselves as a culmination of our learnings, not as the human identities, not as disorders, not as disabilities, not as labels. And when you understand this growth, this cycle, then that's when we go from experiencing the world, from things happening to us to things happening for us. And we recognize all of these things as the catalyst to keep us going. And that was one of the things that was obviously a recurring theme with some of your prior guests, was without those catalysts, which sometimes were pain, sometimes were trauma. And a lot of times when we look back at that, it's painful and traumatic because we didn't take the easy route. Right. When we got the gentle nudges, we ignored them. So we record. So so then they turned into much more forceful catalysts to get us going and where we're at. And so understanding and then not to mention it's be able to experience the mystical nature of Earth by recognizing how these things are happening to us to restore us to these places, right? To follow through that cycle is it's pretty amazing. It's pretty surreal. It's really enjoyable.
Yes, this is wonderful. And also, which part of that cycle do you think our culture skips over or resists most?
We definitely resist anything above and beyond growth.
Mm.
That because society, just even in traditional science, at least in Western teachings in medicine, there's this concept that one type of physio that we're all one size fits all, right? There's one way to be a human, and if you don't fit into that, whether then you are broken, right? Or you have a disorder or a disability. And instead, when you understand things as learning how to maintain love through adversity, and you also then you recognize that many of these things that could be considered challenges were actually, yeah, they were challenges. They're adversity you gave yourself to facilitate teachings, right? If you want to understand, a great way to understand how to open up your mind's eye is to inhibit your ability to see, as an example. But Western teachings would tell you that if you can't see, perfectly in a certain way, that there's something wrong with you. Right? I don't wear these glasses that are kind of shaded because I'm trying to be cool. I wear them because there is so much pollution in here that it helps me to cut through and my body to intake the light properly and remove the headaches and allow the words to stay on the page.
Yeah, it's so interesting how we glorify growth, but often fear the stillness that I think that this is it. And also, how do we restore ourselves when burnout or disconnection becomes the norm, not the exception?
I think that what you're talking about is really, 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 the struggle is real and the challenge is real because, I've you've got kind of the man-made reality that exists, which is you're born and you have to go work inside of somebody else's system, a government system, an employment system, right? And so there is a certain element of, I don't want to sound like I'm encouraging conformity because I'm absolutely the opposite of that, but there is a certain level of playing the game that unless you've learned otherwise and how to maintain the sanctity of yourself in playing that game, it's easy to get caught up in that. And so the best armor that we all have is our genuine and authentic selves. And because when we'll recognize then that when we are our genuine and authentic selves and we recognize that things are happening for us, not to us, that's the difference of like in the work environment when not getting passed up for a promotion or losing a job goes from being the end of the world or a failure, right? In a traditional sense, in a spiritual sense, it's okay. Look, why is this is happening for me? What is this opportunity opening up for me? What is the reflection I need to have during this time? What wasn't I understanding about the journey that I'm supposed to be on? Do I need to understand and learn to embrace this next chapter of my life? And so I think that the big key is to that hat to being able to maintain sanity as well is being able to merge those two worlds and understand how they can work together. They don't have to be at odds.
Yes, that's so wonderful. And what is one internal checkpoint we can use to know when we are overdue or I think overdue for restoration?
This is I think that our approach to our thinking is a big one for me, which is the difference between a fear-based thinking or a love-based thinking. A fear-based thinking is I'm doing this because I don't want this to happen to me. Like, right. So example, fear of missing out. Well, that's absolutely it's a totally a fear-based
Mm.
approach, which is and focusing on what we don't want to have happen to us as opposed to what we do want to have happen to us is a simple way, right? So when we find ourselves, because if you don't know where you want to go, how is the universe going to supposed to support you to get there?
Yeah.
So the better that you can define for yourself where you're trying to go, and the more that where you're trying to go is in line with your lessons that you want to learn here during this incarnation, then the universe is able to properly support you. And that can, whether that be supporting you in the form of, and that's where synchronicities is the other one, right? Even though you may make what on the surface may seem like unpopular decisions, they may be, but within maybe a week, a month, whatever it is, right? None of these things don't happen overnight. Are all of a sudden people crossing your path that you didn't know, somebody out of the blue reaching out to you, offering you up an opportunity, somebody letting you know, somebody reinforcing your belief system, somebody reinforcing that decision, right? There's always these things that happen that reinforce our decision. Relationships are a great one, right? I always say, whenever you end a relationship, there's always something that happens that reinforces whether it was the right decision or the wrong decision, typically pretty shortly, right?
Yeah.
And so it's being able to, pay attention to our surroundings and how they're talking to us.
Yes, sometimes I think, don't realize we are running on empty until we stop and that silence speaks. And
That's so
yes. And what does reclamation mean in your worldview? Like, and how does one begin reclaiming parts of themselves that have been suppressed or lost for years?
yeah, I think this is a great spot where and in words matter. And as we're talking about this, while I reference these in a linear fashion, like anybody who's lived life recognizes it's not a linear fashion. It's more like merit badges, in like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or something along those lines, where it's cyclical, right? Where things work together. So when I say words matter in the reclamation of self, it's what if being nervous or anxious? It's there, it is I'm nervous right now. Well, if you're saying I am, well, then you're reinforcing that versus I'm experiencing this.
Hmm.
Very subtle but critical differences, right? Um, the other aspect of that is whether you're aligning with these earth-based labels and identities or your divine labels and identities, right? Your divine and your soul, everyone only understands itself as positive, productive, love, learning, nurturing. It doesn't understand itself as disabled. So it's really also focusing on how one talks to themselves and the labels that they use to define themselves.
Yeah, that is, so true and so important also for us. And are there practices or environments that help unlock that reconnection?
A lot of people have talked about it. Like I personally use nature a lot. Nature is really important. I moved from having a house in Michigan and so I had my own backyard where I could enjoy a little bit more nature and hang out with some animals, to being moving into downtown Chicago, well, to be with my partner. Um, and there's not nearly as much nature and animals in Chicago and nature to be around. And instead but I have found, I found my squirrel friends and my sparrows and pigeons to be able to hang out with. And so I spent a couple of hours a day hanging out with, when I say hanging out with them, it's, feeding them, whether it be this and just enjoying them and enjoying their company and watching the curiosity in which they operate with, and as we learn how to communicate with each other, we get in our own flows, right? And it's sometimes being able to just step away, it's being able to enjoy the moments of peace, enjoy being present, understanding of, you know, how am I feeling right now when I kind of step away from everything? Am I feeling anxious, or am I really at peace? Is my mind able to be still, or is it racing a million miles a minute? Am I problem solving, or am I just able to enjoy what's going on around me? So I think that a lot of those things, none of this rocket science, but it's, obviously it's easy to say, not always easy to live.
Yes, the word reclamation feels so alive. It's not just healing, it's ownership. And if someone feels like they have outgrown their current life but don't know what's next, what is your advice for moving forward without clarity?
Oh, I love your questions. You're so good at this. A lot of this goes back to, well, so the first is asking for the help and the guidance,
Mhm.
right? You got to let the universe know that you want to speak to you, whether that, when I say the universe, whether it be your guides or however it is that you connect, right? That's going to be different for everyone. But then the second really important part is watching, because generally speaking, it's not going to come in the form of waking up as a download where now all of a sudden everything clicks. Now that may happen right after, experiences and putting the different parts together. But generally, right, this earth being is about learning for yourself. It's about creating self-sufficiency. And so that means learning how to figure it out for yourself. So after asking for the help, it's watching to see how things talk to you. It's watching for the information, whether that information be in the form of an article, somebody crossing your path, a song, and then subsequent ideas that hit your head, you know, and then, and it's typically a culmination of a handful or so of those things happening, and then realizing how to put those different puzzle pieces together to see the full picture. And then that's typically when the clarity comes. And then again, that's also when you get to do that again, is really cool when you start to interact and recognize the world, how it talks to
Yes, it's so powerful what you said, and I think you explained it so beautifully. And how do we trust the unknown when society conditions us to fear it?
you. Yeah, that is one of the serious conundrums is, you know, avoiding adversity is a common measurement of success, where in the spiritual world, adversity is where we learn from. So I
Mhm.
think that, the biggest thing is acknowledging our own individual truths and acknowledging that, like, there's a difference between what's taught and what's common and what's popular out there and what's true for me. And this is where I always encourage people, like, one's quality of life should always be their ultimate guidance. Right? If thing if you are operating in what's true and what's right for you, you should feel better. Life should be more enjoyable. And so and so that, I think it's easy to look around and say there aren't a lot of people enjoying their life. Right? There is a lack of enjoyment, there's a lack of happiness. And so if avoiding adversity really was a measurement of success, we would see a world full of people feeling purpose in their life, feeling that
Mhm.
sense of fulfillment, enjoyment, and happiness. And instead, what we get is people that are afraid and don't know how to handle adversity, don't have that sense of personal power.
Yes. There's something profoundly freeing about choosing evolution, even without a roadmap. And you just explained that so beautifully. And this is a wonderful conversation with you. And I think uh, the knowledge and experience, the stories you have shared is really commendable. So if after this my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Well, I would say either NGen Solutions, which is ENGEN Solutions .com, and that is where I am, starting my movement and creating a community for like-minded people, digitally, for us to come together, be supported with healthcare practitioners, because we have a lot of people that want to live this way, but what we lack is the proper infrastructure to support us. And so that's where my focus is providing the infrastructure. And I'm starting with health and wellness, because, we're talking, you got to be able to be comfortable and at peace in your own skin to be able to navigate life properly. And that also means being supported by both traditional and non-traditional doctors who will honor a different physiology than just this one size fits all approach. or if they want us, if they like what we've got to say, please go and support us at the Make Earth Great Again.love, whether that be, buying a hat or a shirt or a donation. Or check us out at the podcast, which is scienceofviewpodcast.com, where we get into a lot more examples and other people sharing how to interact with the mystical world and recognizing how the world is talking to us. I'm really focused on providing information for personal empowerment versus having to meet with me specifically to get this. Well, I'm always very happy to talk to anybody who hasn't been able to figure it out. But my main focus is using technology and these means to provide people the information so yeah, they can figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. And I will make sure to attach all the details are linked below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and know more about you and have a conversation because you are a wonderful person. And to all my listeners, Graham reminds us that reclaiming your life isn't rebellion, it's a remembrance. If today's conversation nudged something within you, honor it. Begin the cycle, let yourself grow, restore, and return this time more whole. Until we meet again, choose peace, not performance. Choose self and not survival.